life feels like it's stalling right now. Everything seems quiet, almost too quiet. The drive that used to push you forward has softened, and the goals that once felt urgent don't pull at you the same way anymore. But here's what your mind hasn't caught up to yet. This isn't delay. This is recalibration happening at the deepest level, where reality actually forms. The quantum field doesn't prepare your circumstances first. It prepares you to become the person who can hold what's coming without shattering under its weight. What feels like nothing is actually everything shifting beneath the surface. You're not stuck. You're being repositioned. And the moment you understand why this phase exists, you stop fighting it and start trusting that preparation isn't wasted time. It's the most essential part of what you asked for.
The stillness you're experiencing right now isn't what you think it is. I know it feels strange, like you're somehow moving backward or stuck in place while everyone else keeps advancing. But what's actually happening is something your mind hasn't been trained to recognize as progress. This is preparation unfolding. And the difference between understanding this phase as preparation versus seeing it as failure determines whether you move through it with grace or spend months fighting against the exact process that's trying to deliver what you asked for. Most of us have been conditioned to believe that when nothing visible is changing, something must be wrong. We panic when life gets quiet. We assume delay means denial. But the quantum field operates on a completely different timeline than your anxiety does. It doesn't organize outcomes first and then hand them to you. It reorganizes the person who will step into those outcomes. And that internal reorganization rarely looks like the forward momentum you expect. This phase feels so confusing because it removes every external marker you were using to measure progress. The urgency that kept you moving before has faded. The ambitions that felt magnetic just weeks or months ago no longer create the same pull. You might even notice a strange disinterest in the very things you convinced yourself would change everything. And your mind interprets this as apathy, as losing your edge, as somehow falling behind. But it's not. This is your system recalibrating itself before something significantly larger can stabilize inside your reality. From a quantum perspective, the moment you asked for change, you didn't set off a chain reaction of external events. You initiated a complete reorganization of probability itself. And probability doesn't collapse neatly into physical form if your internal state is still configured for the old version of your life. The field doesn't just respond to desire, it responds to coherence. And coherence requires you to restructure internally before anything external can reflect that shift back to you. This is exactly why this phase feels like absolutely nothing is happening. Even though everything underneath the surface is actively shifting, your perception changes before your circumstances do. That's the sequence. Your tolerance for chaos, pressure, and unnecessary struggle begins dissolving. The old rewards that used to motivate you stop satisfying you. Not because you failed at achieving them, but because your internal system no longer registers them as meaningful. The frequency you're operating on has already moved, and those old prizes don't resonate with this new version of you anymore. Neuroscience actually backs this up more than most people realize. Before your brain can encode a major identity update, it goes through a period of deliberate uncertainty. The dopamine-driven motivation that used to fuel your actions drops off. Familiar patterns that once felt automatic start losing their grip on you. This isn't collapse. This is your nervous system creating flexibility. It's loosening the old predictions it made about who you are and what's possible for you, so it can encode entirely new ones. And during that window of transition, your mind reads neutrality as stagnation, even though this is actually the most fertile state for transformation. Spiritually, this is the space that exists between identities. You don't feel like the person you were before, but you also don't feel fully anchored yet in who you're becoming. That in-between space feels deeply uncomfortable because it lacks any solid reference points. There's nothing to chase after, and nothing that needs fixing. And for a system that has been conditioned to equate constant movement with safety, that kind of stillness can register as a threat. This is exactly where most people completely interrupt the process. They mistake the silence for failure and immediately try to force momentum back into their life. They pile on more pressure, create new goals, repeat affirmations with more intensity, or distract themselves with busyness, not realizing they're pulling themselves right back into the old frequency just as it was finally dissolving. The quantum field reads that interference with absolute clarity. It doesn't pause to punish you. It pauses because precision matters. What you asked for isn't running late. It's waiting for you to become compatible with it. And that compatibility isn't built through more effort. It's built through release, through letting go of the internal habits that would fracture the very reality you're calling in if it showed up too soon. This is why preparation so often feels like subtraction. Less noise, less urgency, less emotional charge around outcomes. You're not being emptied because something's missing. You're being cleared out because what's coming next requires space to land. The field doesn't try to stack new realities on top of unstable identities. It waits for coherence to form first. In the comments, drop one word that captures the energy you're choosing to carry forward right now. Maybe it's alignment. Maybe it's ease. Maybe it's trust. Maybe it's something completely unique to you. Let that word be a small but powerful declaration, a signal you're sending not just into this space, but into the quantum field itself. Trust becomes absolutely essential during this phase, not because you need some kind of blind faith, but because your mind no longer has the familiar evidence it's used to leaning on. This is where control loosens and intuition begins sharpening. You might notice that you're less reactive than you used to be, less invested in forcing specific outcomes, and more aware of timing. That's not detachment. That's alignment beginning to stabilize inside you. If you're feeling disconnected from your old life but not anxious about what comes next, you're not lost. You're being repositioned. The version of you that originally asked for this change cannot receive it while still operating from the same internal posture that asked. Something fundamental has to shift first. And that shift is already happening, whether you can see it yet or not. This phase isn't asking you to do more. It's asking you to stop interrupting what's already unfolding, to stop demanding proof before the internal adjustment finishes, to recognize that preparation feels invisible only because it's happening at the level that actually determines everything else. What you asked for already exists as a probability in the quantum field. And probability collapses into your physical reality only when the observer, which is you, becomes stable enough to recognize it as normal, not exciting, not overwhelming, just normal. If you're here right now, watching this, feeling quiet but alert, detached but steady, less driven but more aware, this isn't the universe ignoring your request. This is the universe aligning you, and once preparation finishes running its course, what shows up won't feel dramatic or miraculous. It will feel inevitable. The most difficult part of preparation is that it doesn't give your mind anything concrete to measure. There's no checklist to complete, no milestone to hit, no external confirmation telling you that yes, you're on the right path. And because your mind was trained to equate movement with progress, it interprets this quiet phase as stagnation. But stagnation is rigid and stuck. What you're experiencing is fluid and adaptive. When the quantum field begins preparing you, it doesn't add more energy to your system, it removes interference. And the removal of interference feels empty to a system that has spent years identifying with effort, urgency, and emotional intensity. The silence you're experiencing isn't absence. It's space being created for something new. This is why preparation often feels like life is slowing down all around you. Conversations feel repetitive. Old goals suddenly seem irrelevant. Situations that used to trigger massive emotional reactions no longer hook you the same way. It's not that you've become passive or indifferent. It's that your nervous system is no longer reacting from the survival patterns that used to define your entire identity. From a quantum standpoint, probability only collapses when noise decreases. The field doesn't respond to chaotic, scattered signals. It responds to clarity. And clarity requires subtraction before addition can happen. You can't tune into a completely new frequency while you're still broadcasting fragments of the old one. The signals interfere with each other. Neuroscience explains this mechanism as well. When your brain prepares for a new identity, it temporarily suspends the old reward loops that kept you moving. Dopamine spikes decrease. The constant chase loses its appeal. This isn't depression. This is disengagement from patterns that are no longer congruent with where you're headed. Your brain is clearing bandwidth so it can process something entirely different. This is why so many people describe this phase as feeling neutral. Not happy, not sad, just quiet. And neutrality can feel deeply unsettling if you've spent most of your life oscillating between intense desire and intense frustration. But neutrality is actually where reorganization happens. It's the space where new internal predictions can form without being immediately overridden by old expectations. Spiritually, this phase has been described across different traditions as a void, a desert, or a wilderness. Not because it's empty or barren, but because it strips away false orientation. You can't rely on your old compass anymore, but the new one hasn't fully calibrated yet. That liminal space forces presence. It forces you to be here, now, without the crutch of knowing exactly what's coming next. This is also where trust gets completely misunderstood. Trust isn't believing that something good will eventually happen. Trust is allowing the process to unfold without demanding reassurance at every single step. And the universe tests this capacity, not through chaos, but through stillness. It removes distractions and watches whether you immediately rush to refill the space. Many people do exactly that. They panic at the quiet. They return to overthinking, overplanning, overproducing, not because they actually need to, but because the old identity feels unsafe without constant movement. And every single time they do that, they pull themselves right back into the frequency that's trying to dissolve. Preparation asks for restraint, not inactivity, but restraint from interference. It asks you to notice when you're about to fill the space with noise and consciously choose not to. This isn't discipline in the traditional sense. It's maturity of awareness. The reason this phase feels so invisible is because the changes are happening at the level that creates everything else. Your relationship with time is shifting. You're less rushed, less reactive, more selective about where you place your attention. That alone changes outcomes dramatically, even before anything external rearranges itself. You may also notice that your intuition sharpens during this time, not in some dramatic, mystical way, but in a practical one. You sense when to move and when not to. You stop forcing clarity. You let it arrive when it's ready. This is coherence forming. And coherence is exactly what the quantum field recognizes as readiness. What's important to understand is that preparation doesn't feel good in the way motivation feels good. It feels stable, grounded, less emotional. And that lack of emotional charge can trick your mind into thinking nothing important is happening. But the most significant shifts rarely announce themselves with emotion. They integrate quietly. They feel obvious only when you look back later. If this message is landing for you, hit subscribe and click the bell icon next to it. Also, join our manifestation club on gogetter.au. This isn't just a channel, this is a frequency. If you felt something shift while watching, you're already tuned in. We're not just consuming content here, we're practicing new ways of being. We're not just absorbing information, we're creating possibilities. We're not just learning, we're remembering. Let's keep growing and shifting together. If you're in this phase right now, your only job is not to accelerate it. Acceleration fractures coherence. Your job is to stay present without trying to define what's coming next. To allow the old internal scaffolding to dismantle without rebuilding it prematurely. This is the part of manifestation that can't be rushed, because it determines whether what arrives will actually stay. The field isn't withholding anything from you. It's ensuring stability before collapse. And once that stability is fully achieved, the shift doesn't require effort. It requires recognition. You'll recognize it when it happens, because nothing inside you will argue with it. That's how you know preparation is complete. What you asked for didn't fail to arrive because it was too big or too impossible. It paused because the version of you who originally asked for it couldn't sustain it yet. That's the part most manifestation teachings completely skip over. Not every desire can land inside the same identity that created the desire in the first place. The quantum field doesn't deliver outcomes in isolation. It delivers entire states of being, and every state comes with a corresponding level of responsibility, perception, and internal regulation. If those elements aren't already in place, the field delays, not to deny you, but to protect coherence. This is why some manifestations arrive quickly and then collapse just as fast. The external reality shows up before the internal structure is ready to hold it. The nervous system becomes overwhelmed. Old coping strategies resurface. The identity fractures under the weight of what it received, and the person assumes they lost it. But in truth, they just outpaced their own integration. What you're being prepared for right now is not just the thing you asked for. It's the version of yourself that can live inside that reality without destabilizing it. From a neurological perspective, this triggers self-sabotage, withdrawal, or over-control. Your brain isn't trying to ruin your life. It's trying to preserve internal stability. That's why preparation focuses on identity before outcome. Your system must learn that the new reality is safe, sustainable, and familiar, and that learning doesn't happen through imagination alone. It happens through gradual internal recalibration, reduced urgency, increased presence, a softened relationship with control. Spiritually, this has always been understood as expansion of capacity. You don't receive what you want, you receive what you can hold. And holding something new requires releasing the structures that were built to survive without it. This is where the process becomes uncomfortable, because what dissolves first is not your circumstances, it's your self-concept. You start noticing that the version of you who needed to struggle, prove yourself, or constantly anticipate the next obstacle no longer fits. The old identity begins feeling heavy, outdated, and deeply misaligned. This is also why preparation often includes loss that doesn't look dramatic from the outside. You lose interest, you lose urgency, you lose the emotional charge that once fueled your ambition. And your mind panics because it interprets that loss as regression. But it's not regression, it's transition. You're shedding the emotional mechanics that kept you moving when coherence wasn't available yet. In the comments, share one small act you're committing to today, something that anchors you into your new life path. It could be as simple as breathe, or trust, or open. Your word matters. Your act matters, because you matter. The field understands something your mind resists. Effort was a bridge, not a destination. The habits that helped you survive the old reality cannot be the same ones that sustain the new one. And until you stop relying on them, the shift remains incomplete. This is why patience becomes essential here. Not passive patience, but embodied patience. The ability to stay present without demanding immediate evidence. The ability to remain open without micromanaging timing. The ability to trust that internal restructuring is not wasted time, but necessary sequencing. When the identity stabilizes, manifestation accelerates without force. Things don't arrive explosively, they align naturally. Opportunities feel obvious instead of miraculous. Decisions require less overthinking. You move at the right moment Because your internal timing matches the external one. That's preparation completing itself. If you're feeling less desperate, less reactive, less invested in controlling how things should unfold, that's not a sign you've stopped wanting what you asked for. It's a sign you're becoming compatible with it. The universe isn't asking you to want less. It's asking you to become more stable. And stability isn't built through effort. It's built through release. What you ask for is not waiting on the other side of time. It's waiting on the other side of identity. And once that identity locks in, nothing needs to be forced. Reality recognizes you immediately. Trust is not what people think it is. It's not optimism. It's not positive thinking. And it's definitely not pretending everything will work out just because you want it to. Trust at this level is structural. It's what remains when the need to interfere dissolves completely. The reason trust becomes so central right before a manifestation collapses into form is because interference is the last thing keeping the old identity alive. As long as you feel the urge to check, adjust, rush, or control the process, part of you is still anchored to the version that doesn't fully believe reality can meet you without effort. From a quantum perspective, collapse happens when observation stabilizes, not when desire peaks, not when emotion intensifies, but when the observer stops oscillating. And oscillation comes from doubt, disguised as vigilance. This is why trust the universe feels like frustrating advice to people who are still inside survival-based identities. Because to a nervous system that learned safety through control, trust feels like danger. It feels like letting go of the only leverage you think you have. But in truth, control was never leverage. It was compensation. Neuroscience makes this clear. When your brain perceives uncertainty, it increases prediction and monitoring. That creates mental noise, and noise disrupts coherence. Trust, in contrast, signals safety to your nervous system. When the nervous system relaxes its grip, perception widens, timing improves, decisions become cleaner. You don't miss opportunities because you're no longer bracing against life. Spiritually, trust is the moment you stop negotiating with the future. You're no longer asking, when will it happen, or am I doing this right? Those questions belong to an identity that believes alignment must be earned continuously. The aligned identity doesn't ask those questions because it no longer doubts its compatibility. This is why trust often feels boring. There's no emotional spike, no anticipation, no drama, just steadiness. And steadiness is exactly what allows reality to reorganize efficiently. The field responds to stable signals, not anxious ones. What most people don't realize is that impatience delays manifestation more than doubt ever could. Impatience is a declaration that the present moment is insufficient. And that declaration keeps you oriented toward lack, even if everything else is aligned. The field hears that immediately. Trust is not passive, it's precise. It's the ability to remain internally consistent without external confirmation, to stay coherent without proof, to stop adjusting the signal just because nothing visible has happened yet. This is why the final phase of preparation often feels like restraint. You feel the urge to act, explain, or move, and you don't. Not because you're avoiding action, but because action isn't required yet. Timing is. And timing can't be forced without fracturing the outcome. You may notice that when trust stabilizes, synchronicity increases quietly. Conversations land differently. Information arrives at the exact moment it's useful. Opportunities don't feel lucky. They feel obvious. That's because your internal timing is now synchronized with the field's response. This is the last adjustment before collapse. When you no longer ask reality to prove itself to you, when you stop watching the door and simply remain available for what fits, that's when everything shifts. And here's the paradox. The moment you truly trust, you stop caring whether it arrives today or later. And that release of urgency is often what allows it to arrive at all. Trust doesn't say, "I hope this works." Trust says, I don't need to interfere. At that point, the old identity has nothing left to do. Its strategies no longer apply. Its fears no longer govern decisions. And without resistance, the field completes what it began the moment you asked. If you're here feeling calm without answers, steady without guarantees, and less concerned with timing than you used to be, this is not you giving up. This is you aligning so precisely that effort is no longer necessary. And when that happens, manifestation doesn't feel magical, it feels natural. Because the only thing that was ever in the way was interference. At this point, the preparation is no longer theoretical, it's embodied. You don't need more understanding, you need stability. The kind that doesn't fluctuate based on mood, timing, or external validation. This is where manifestation quietly completes itself. Not through action, but through alignment that no longer needs supervision. What you asked for was never waiting for the right conditions outside of you. It was waiting for the internal environment to become coherent enough to receive it without distortion. That coherence isn't excitement. It isn't certainty. It's neutrality with readiness, calm with availability. This is why the final phase doesn't feel dramatic. There's no emotional climax, no moment where everything suddenly makes sense. Instead, there's a quiet, internal click. A sense that you don't need to chase clarity anymore, that you don't need to rehearse the future or prepare for every possible outcome. You're simply here, present, responsive, grounded. From a quantum perspective, this is when probability collapses cleanly, not because you demanded it, but because the observer stabilized. The field doesn't rush to impress you. It arranges reality efficiently when the signal is clear, and clarity always arrives after interference stops. Neuroscience mirrors this perfectly. When your nervous system exits hypervigilance, perception sharpens. You notice opportunities without scanning for them. You respond instead of react. Decisions feel obvious instead of heavy. That's not luck. That's regulation meeting timing. Spiritually, this is receiving without grasping. You're no longer trying to manifest. You're allowing life to meet you where you already are. And because there's no internal resistance left, what arrives doesn't feel overwhelming or fragile. It feels sustainable. This is also where many people unintentionally sabotage themselves. Not by doing something wrong, but by doubting the quiet. They expect manifestation to feel explosive. When it feels subtle, they assume they missed it. But subtlety is the signature of alignment. Loud changes belong to unstable systems. Stable shifts arrive softly. You don't need to announce that your life is changing. You don't need to prove that you're aligned. You don't need to explain what you're becoming. The less you interfere, the faster reality completes the transition. If you're in this phase, the only thing asked of you now is consistency, not effort. Consistency of presence, consistency of internal posture, consistency of trust without passivity. You move when movement feels clean, you wait when waiting feels neutral. You stop forcing meaning into every delay. And this is where structure can support integration, not as a method to manifest, but as a way to remain coherent while reality reorganizes. That's why quantum rebirth exists. It was created to help stabilize identity during these exact transitions, so you don't unconsciously revert to old patterns once things begin to move. Alongside it, the quantum grimoire serves as a practical companion, a space to observe, reflect, and anchor the internal shifts that are already happening without turning them into pressure. You'll find both in the pinned comment for whenever you feel ready to deepen this integration. Nothing here is about chasing the universe. Nothing is about convincing it to respond. What you asked for is already responding. It's adjusting around the version of you that no longer interferes. And when it arrives, it won't feel like a miracle. It will feel like recognition, like something that finally fits. Because the truth is simple, even if it took time to see it. You were never being delayed. You were being prepared. and preparation is complete the moment you stop asking for proof. Make sure you share this video with your loved ones. You might just be the blessing in disguise they need today. Remember, you're not just sharing, you're spreading clarity and trust. And that energy will come back to you tenfold.